That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The First Omen, the directorial debut of Arkasha Stevenson, which is being released courtesy of 20th Century Studios, a.k.a. Disney, on April 5th, 2024.
I didn't realize this was a directorial debut.
Yeah, she previously... Well, I know she directed one episode of Brand New Cherry Flavor, which I still have been meaning to watch but have not seen. But yeah, this was a big deal.
What is The First Omen about? A young American woman is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church, but encounters a darkness that causes her to question her faith and uncovers a terrifying conspiracy that hopes to bring about the birth of evil incarnate. What is your pull quote?
In Hollywood, it's always better the devil you know, but the continual plundering of past properties might feel less egregious with this creepy prequel, which, though familiar, earns its mark of the beast.
Mine. The First Omen is an intriguing and effective prequel that may have benefited from forging its own path. I quite like this movie.
Yeah, I mean, based on, the bullshit we have to watch, like, David Gordon Green's Exorcist Believer, this was a kind of a pleasant surprise.
Or like The Nun too.
Well, that's just, I know. This is garbage.
But you like this one even more than Immaculate.
I did. I think the lead is a little more well-rounded than Sydney Sweeney as a nun who is also about to bear the fruit of the devil.
So what is the story about? It's set in 1971, and there's a young lady named Margaret who travels from Massachusetts to Rome to join a new convent and be, what is the term, like when a woman becomes a nun? Like
she takes the veil.
Or takes the veil. Okay. So that's what she's in Rome for.
Confirmation. And yeah, she's a novitiate.
And the priest in charge of this convent is played by Bill Nighy.
Well, he's the Cardinal.
Oh, he's the Cardinal. Mm-hmm. I don't know the hierarchy, in the administrative chart at this corporation.
Well, trust that if you were part of it, they would make sure you know.
Yeah. But Bill Nighy has a history with Margaret because she was born and raised in the orphanage, and he knew her back. He's followed her throughout her life, which is important to the story. But anyway, she shows up, and we know things are weird straight away because there is a young girl named Carlita. Maybe she's like 13. And she's one of the girls who lives in the convent because they have an orphanage. And she is having issues. Like, she's seeing visions. Her behavior is bad. They keep locking her in the bad room. She draws these creepy sketches.
Well, she signs her drawings, their full name.
Yeah, like
Carlita Skianna. But we learned from the opening moment in an exchange with Charles Dance, who dies right away, a father, Harris, who's talking to Father Brennan, played by Ralph Ineson. He shows a picture of this baby to Father Brennan with the last name Skianna on the back of it, and saying that this is a natural child.
But Margaret has a roommate, this other novitiate named Luce. Mm-hmm. And Luce is kind of a wild child. And she says, girl, we need to go have fun before you become a nun. Like, the two of us need to go have our last night of fun. So they get all dolled up and go to a disco, and they meet a couple of men. Specifically, Margaret meets this very handsome man named Paolo, who they have a gay old time. And then we see her the next morning looking like she's been rode hard and put up wet. Mm-hmm. And Luce tells her, like, girl, you had a wild time last night. And Margaret's concerned, like, oh my God, what did I do? And she's like, well, don't worry, it'll be our little secret. So long story short, we find out that this church, like this specific convent, because in the background, there's a lot of socio-political unrest, specifically with the young people, like they're anti-war, they're anti-church. And we're told that this convent in particular, they believe that they need to reignite people's faith in God, and they want to do that by
scaring them
mm-hmm. by raising the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. And we can get back to it, but they believe that they can control the devil somehow. I don't know. But so they've been trying to birth the devil's baby. And we can get into it, but initially we believe that it's this little girl Carlita who's going to carry the baby,
and through a very poor filing system, learn
Yes.
that she is number 14.
Yeah, but ultimately she's too young to, I guess, carry a baby, so that's why they brought Margaret over from Massachusetts,
Her sister.
because they're technically sisters.
Mhm.
And that night when they went to the disco, Paolo and Luz were in on it to basically lure her back. So they get her drunk enough that they can lure her back to get pregnant by this jackal.
Yeah, it's very the
Rosemary's Baby.
Rosemary's Baby. Like, this is really happening. Mhm.
So we see her. She's pregnant. She gives birth to twins. One of the twins is a boy, and they believe that boy is the Antichrist. And
They scuttle away with him.
give him to Gregory Peck.
Yeah, they throw him on a plane, bring him to DC, and then they just burn down the building in which Margaret and, well, she stabs Bill Nighy, so his corpse is in there, and the baby girl are just gonna, they think, presume, burned to death.
So Gregory Peck is of course reference to the 1976 film The Omen, and the idea is that this little boy, the Antichrist, will be raised in a family with privilege and will have access to all the things.
Political
and at that
power.
point will wreak havoc on earth, which will then lead people to Christ.
And that baby is, of course, Damien.
The end.
Yeah.
Now there is a final scene that we can talk about a little bit later. But yeah, I thought that, and we've watched, fairly recently, we watched the sequels.
I think in 2019 we had a review on YouTube of the box set Blu-rays put out by Shout
that's
Video.
Right. I forgot about that.
I think it was Shout Video.
So I actually think this film fits in nicely with.
Yeah, it brings us exactly, it abuts right up next to the original film.
So when we sat down, I thought, oh, this is going to be another like lame PG-13, like religious based possession movie. But about like 25 minutes in, we have like a delivery scene with another young woman at the convent, and we see the devil's hand protrude from her vagina. And that's when I realized, oh, this movie is rated R.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are a lot of really interesting flourishes, a lot of memorable moments that really elevated this from the normal schlock we get related to this subject matter.
Yeah, I think I actually found it at times a bit more interesting than Immaculate, even though I love the conservative backlash against Immaculate, of course. But I thought that Margaret, played by Nell Tiger Free, who we reviewed in a film called Settlers, I think that she gives a fine performance. I found her a little more well adept at navigating this universe than Sydney Sweeney, for instance.
I'm just going to go through my notes. Father Brennan, he's the one in the opening scene who witnesses the other priest get killed, and he's the one who has sort of put two and two together. He explains to Margaret and the audience that he believes there are two types of Catholics, basically, the kind who believe in God's love and like believe in all that's good, and then there's another version who believe in all the bad things because they think it's necessary for people to, like, you need the dark to see the light.
Yes, but also I think he has a statement in there about they are so afraid to give up power that they are fine going to the devil,
which I kind of thought was subversive. A little, yeah, it was interesting. But I have to say, he says, or we find out that basically like they're trying to create something to fear. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would make such a great tagline. And then I realized that is the tagline for this movie. Yeah. Create something to fear.
And then since no one is believing in God anymore, nobody's stopping these people from whipping up the Antichrist because they don't believe in that either.
I thought that was an interesting idea. That because people don't believe in this shit, that these people are free to do all these experiments because no one thinks that it's real.
You know what? That approach reminded me of, there's this old 1940s movies with Deborah Carr called I See a Dark Stranger. And she's this Irish woman who hates the British so much that she becomes a Nazi.
Oh, I was going to say about Father Brennan, though. He reminded me of if you mix Nicolas Cage and Tobin Bell.
You've seen him many times. He's Tobin Bell. He's the patriarch in The Witch.
Oh. Well, speaking of how people look, I thought the actor playing Luce was beautiful, but she reminded me of so many people, especially when she becomes a nun and they cut her hair. But I thought she looked like if you take like Penelope Cruz playing Donatella Versace as Lady Gaga doing Dita Von Teese.
Well, that's an evolution.
She has a beautiful face.
That's her name is Maria Caballero. I looked her up. I'm not familiar with her work, but she did a film in 2019 called My Grandmother's a Lesbian! Exclamation point, which has a very birdcage sounding plot.
How fun would that be? My grandmother were a lesbian. And then Margaret, that actor was giving me Claire Danes.
Sure. A big, wide open face. Yes.
And since we're naming other people lookalikes, I thought the little girl playing Carlita, you said reminded you of Violet Chachki out of Drag.
Like, leave Violet alone.
Leave Violet alone. So when Margaret first gets to the convent, we meet Sister
Silva,
played by
the great Sônia Braga. Yeah. Who, you know what, is giving me Angela Molina vibes in this, because Angela Molina just played a nun for Liliana Cavani in a terrible film. But
I thought Sister Silva was giving me Melissa from The Real World New Orleans. But anyway.
I love Sônia Braga.
Yeah, you do. She has more to do than this. Well, because she was recently in a J-Lo movie.
She's played J-Lo. Nothing to do. She's played J-Lo's mama a couple times, but she's in Shotgun Wedding. Yeah,
she's not as fun in this one as, I mean, she's not like one of those like horribly mean nuns.
She's actually kind of matter of fact.
She is.
Stay away from Carlita. Do your shit.
Yeah, basically. Which I kind of liked, because we know that there's something up, obviously, because we're sitting in the theater watching this movie. But I think just objectively watching how this convent's being run, you wouldn't necessarily think they're up to no good. You would think that maybe there's an evil entity in the convent. But I was slightly surprised that they were so in on it.
Like at how in on it they are. Like, oh my God, you're birthing all these mutated babies.
So I think the characterizations made sense, because I assumed that these nuns thought that Carlita was possessed and they were just trying to hide it, not knowing that they're actually trying to impregnate this little girl. But when we first meet the other nuns, they're all outside. They're all sitting outside. Like the film looks beautiful, and they're all, several of them are sitting outside peeling potatoes. And I thought, these are some loose ass nuns, because they're talking very like just some ladies sitting around gossiping. Which I'm not accustomed to seeing nuns portrayed in this way, like as more like human beings.
Hey, but those who lie with the devil usually know a little bit more about fun. Am I right? This was shot by Aaron Morton, who did the Evil Dead remake, and also No One Will Save You, which we reviewed recently.
Okay. So some memorable scenes are when Margaret sees a woman going into labor. That was pretty extreme.
Well, they gas her.
Yeah, so then she's like, I think they give her like nitrous oxide. So then she's like laughing, and we see her vagina, but it's not full on, and there's a lot of. I thought it was pretty well done. Like, it's pretty creepy, but
yeah, it's kind of a female body horror take on The Omen, really.
But I think maybe my favorite scene is when Margaret and Luce go to the disco. I thought that looked really cool. The music was excellent.
Okay, so this is opening on the same day as Monkey Man, which also utilizes Boney M. But the track that we get here is Daddy Cool, when they're first flirting, which I love that song.
I don't love to go out, and there's a bar you like to go to that has like Italian disco night. And I never have liked the music they play there. But if they played this Italian disco night, then I might go and dance. But I liked it. And then that's when she meets Paolo. And I thought Paolo was so cute. That actor's last name, I think, sounds like Archangel.
Yeah, it does.
But they're having a cute moment, and he's talking to her about Barbra Streisand and like playing with the accents. I thought that was really cute. But the next morning when Margaret wakes up, that shot of her in bed looking bedraggled with her hair looking almost like Ursula the Sea Witch.
Yeah.
I thought that would make an excellent poster. So I would love that image in a poster. But I also thought that image in a poster would make a great film about a young lady who has this like wild night before she's supposed to be confirmed as a nun.
That reminded me of when we were talking about that there's this documentary about Amish people. The young people do that as well.
That's right. Yeah, I would love someone to make that movie. But
they have her lying down several times in the film, and her hair is always fanned out like that. Did you notice that?
Yes, and I loved it. Also, I think there are times when she's wearing a wig and times when maybe that's some of her real hair and then extensions. But I thought I like the effect her hair has.
Like J-Lo?
It's better than that. So then there's a scene that's familiar to people who've seen the original Omen, because there is a nun who is kind of weird when we first meet her, and she seems oddly attached to Carlita, the little demon girl. And there's a moment when, just like in the original film, when the one lady says it's all for you, Damien, and she jumps off the building.
The maid.
The maid. In this film, the nun does the same. She goes up while everyone's watching in the courtyard and says it's all for you, which of course I have to shout out Janet Jackson's #1 hit. And then, and then she self-immolates.
If you really want it.
And then jumps off. Well, she hangs herself.
She tosses she starts herself on fire and hangs herself. Yeah,
I thought that lady kind of reminded me of Scarlet Bobo, but the one who jumps. But I thought it was funny when she jumps. So she sets herself on fire, then jumps, and one of the nuns doesn't scream until she jumps. And I thought, bitch, you just saw this lady light herself on fire. Well, and that didn't elicit a scream.
Shock works on people.
I know, ways. But it was a funny edit. Like,
yes, that is a direct shout out to the original. And then, because of course, after that happens in the original, then we get the new keeper of Damien, which is the great Billy Whitelaw, who is then played by Mia Farrow in that really bad remake. Do you remember the remake of The Omen? We watched that as part of that box set.
Was that the one that was for TV?
No.
Oh.
No, that was the remake that came out on 6/6/2006. Oh,
yes. With
Liev Schreiber, Mia Farrow, right. And right. What's that other little white girl's name? Julia Stiles.
That's right. Oh, that's right. So then Paula goes out, or Margaret goes out looking for answers, she's driving from A to B, and she spies Paolo just randomly walking on the street. So she tells the driver, stop, and she chases him, and he is so freaked out. So we know something happened that night. And he's like, I'm sorry, no, he's running. And then she finally catches up to him, and she's like, what happened? And he tells her, look for the mark. And then before he can finish, he gets hit by a truck. Not unlike, because we just rewatched the movie Signs, that M. Night Shyamalan movie. And there's a similar scene where Mel Gibson's wife gets hit by a vehicle. And in that movie, I think it's so funny that the sheriff, played by
Sherry Jones,
she is trying to explain to Mel Gibson, like, your wife was hit and she's hit in a way that she's, split in half, so she doesn't have long to live. So I want to prepare you. And I'm like, bitch, let's speed this up because my wife's about to die. And it's the same thing in this movie. She sees Paolo hit, like, pinned against the wall. And while I thought it was a cool scene, it was so crazy to me that she tried to move him. And so she tries to move him, even though he's pinned against the wall, and she's able to pick him up and like move him from the truck.
His top half.
But it's only the top half of his body. But I thought that was so crazy, because if he's like an average sized man who maybe weighs like 160 pounds, that means that she picked up like 80 pounds. And that's not possible. Because my little Bowflex system, one of the pieces weighs 55 pounds, and I have a very hard time picking that up. And that little scrawny Margaret picked.
Yeah, but adrenaline, Joseph, adrenaline.
But didn't that look crazy?
It did.
Like, how did you think it was a good idea to try to move him? They don't teach nuns first aid.
Well, not then, but I'm sure.
Don't you know you're not supposed to move people? Okay, so then Margaret has met with Father Brennan, and he's explained to her all the things. And so now that all this weird stuff is happening, she believes, and then she tries to find the files. So she goes into Sister Silva's office, finds a key, goes to like that basement, and there are all these files. And that's when we realize that Carlita was, because the Father Brennan tells her, like, the child has to be born on 6/6 and born at 6 a.m. And so we see all these files and we realize that they have tried multiple times. Like you already mentioned, Carlita's number 14. And a lot of these other kids were born with like horrible like physical defects or they died.
It's very that moment in Alien Resurrection when she realizes she's number 8.
Yes.
I know I just referenced in some other review as well. Yeah.
But she takes the files and like runs through the convent. And I thought she's not being very discreet with those files.
She's not. She puts a cloth over them, but it's like, okay.
I think people could tell that there's something going on.
But then she grabs Carlita and immediately all the nuns are looking like something's wrong.
Yeah, you're not very discreet. And then they end up catching Margaret and locking her in the bad room. But then there's this one little priest who I thought seemed kind of gay.
That's Father Gabriel. He's played by Tawfeek Barhom, who was in Tariq Saleh's last film, which was released as Cairo Conspiracy. When I saw it, it was called Boy from Heaven. So yeah, he's in a throwaway role here.
But he helps get her out, and then they go find
Father Brennan.
But I thought there are a lot of moments where several characters are doing like really fast praying. That sounds like mumbling, but I thought it reminded me of in Laverne and Shirley when they're like Shmiel, Schmazel, Haus and Pfeffer Incorporated. It sounded like they were saying that repeatedly.
Well, if you really take a step back, all prayers are just words strung together.
Oh God. I knew Margaret was in trouble because she has like a driver, this creepy looking guy.
He looks dead.
And he never asks questions. And then I thought, she's in trouble. He's doing what he's told to do. But they end up trying to take her to go get an abortion. Because that's when she realizes that night at the disco is when she got pregnant by the jackal. So they have to go get her an abortion. And on the way...
Some could even say that's murder on the dance floor.
They get hit by a car because, of course, the church is trying to stop her. But then there's a really cool scene where Margaret is like it almost looks like her water breaks because she's pregnant, but she's never showing. And then all of a sudden, she gets like a full belly.
It's like I said, that's a top ramen pregnancy right there.
Yeah, but that scene reminded me of
Possession.
Yeah, with
Isabella Johnny.
Yes,
yeah.
Who I think Margaret could favor.
She could. Johnny's like exquisitely.
She's otherworldly, but I thought that this actor, what's the actor name?
Nell Tiger Free.
I thought if that's her doing it, it was like the physicality of that scene was.
The physicality is great. I'm sure that there are some audio enhancements, but it's funny. It has to be a shout out to Possession. I couldn't imagine this filmmaker has not seen that movie with this scene. But in Possession, it's a miscarriage that's happening in the subway, and this is the opposite.
But it's very effective.
Yeah, it's great.
So then we see that the church has captured Margaret, tied her up. Her like mentor Bill Nighy is there, and he's like, "You're doing God's work. Like I always knew you were going to be special.
It's like you're doing such a good job.
And so she gives birth, the 2 babies. They're more concerned about the boy. The girl, they just basically throw away.
Well, she gives birth to like this sack.
Yeah, and they cut it
amniotic sac.
Yeah, that was creepy when they cut it open, and then we see that. At first, I thought Margaret was going to kill the boy because she says, "Can I hold my baby?" And then I thought kind of a corny scene with Sister Silva telling her like, "Oh, it's so important.
We all need a mother's comfort at first."
Yeah, a baby needs to bond with the mother. I thought that was corny.
But that's very much, in Rosemary's Baby when there's all those creepy old people. What's that old lady that sticks out her tongue, Louise?
Oh, yeah.
Like I don't want her to see the baby.
But then she holds the baby, and then for sure I thought, she's going to kill it because she's sitting next to all the surgery utensils, and she has like a scalpel. Like we see that a scalpel was taken, so it's like Margaret has a scalpel in her hand. She's going to kill the Antichrist. But instead she kills Bill Nighy.
Mm-hmm.
And then she takes the baby and is like holding it, like telling everyone, get away, get away. But then, of course, Sister Silva snatches that baby from her. And then because Luce, who's in on it, stabs Margaret in the belly.
Mm-hmm.
So then we think Margaret's going to die. They set the building on fire. We see the jackal burn.
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully, Carlita was somehow waiting in the wings, the little girl. And Carlita saves Margaret and the daughter. And then we get the mention of Gregory Peck and what's going to happen to Damien. But then the final scene of the film, which I did not think we needed, is we get like an extra 2-3 minutes of Margaret, Carlita, and her baby living in like the snowy woods,
hiding out.
And the baby looks like it's like years old.
Yeah, it's grown.
Don't know how she bought a house in the woods, but Father Brennan shows up. And he's like, girl, they know you're alive, and they know these 2 kids are alive, and they're going to come for you. And she basically tells them skedaddle, and that's the end. So I'm wondering, I feel like this could make like a good, like if they did like the Omen 1.5.
The First Omen Part 2.
Like the first, like if you mix the First Omen with like Part 3, like maybe
where Sam Neill is Damien.
Yeah, but maybe like adolescent Damien mixed like against his sister, because maybe she's like good and he's evil.
Damiana.
Based on this,
what's her name?
Yeah, she didn't they say her name? I don't remember.
I think they did. I don't remember now.
But based on this filmmaker's work, I would be into that, because I thought that they did a fine job with this film.
It is clear that a bunch of care was taken. It of course is a franchise property, but it's clear that there were some interesting ideas and things to be said. I think there's a subversive approach about what this religious institution is trying to do. I think the cinematography is great. I think the score is fantastic. It's got Mark Corvern, who's done who often works with Robert Eggers. He scored The Witch and The Lighthouse, because there's all this wailing.
Yeah.
There's all these like sweeping shots of Rome at night with this wailing on the soundtrack that's kind of unsettling. I was surprised, actually.
What would you give The First Omen?
You know, talking about it more also made me realize how many interesting textures there are in it. So I'm giving it 3.5.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. I would give it 3.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.